All right, guys, welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 this week. I'm still at ATA, and I am with Warren and David Holder from Raised Hunting, and we talk deer zones and how this idea birthed in their heads about deer living in certain zones and not going out of them. It's a fun episode. You're going to learn a lot about deer hunting, as always. This episode is brought to you by ScentLock. Go check out all their new products that they just launched at ATA.
Welcome to Bear Archery's Hunting 101 podcast, where hunters new and old come to learn and find inspiration from stories of hunts gone by. Everyone is welcome to enjoy the outdoor way of life, and there is no better time to start than right now. So let's head into the great outdoors with your host, Dylan Ray.
All right, David and Warren Holder, man, I'm excited to have you on. We're at ATA 2023. Before we dive in, though, you guys just launched your own podcast, man. Where can they go tune in?
All the podcast places. You can get it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You should be able to get it pretty much everywhere. Just Raised Hunting Podcast. We spent a lot of time on the name,
Yeah.
So,
You really came up with something new, huh?
Yeah. We put a lot of time
if
into
it works, why change it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, we already had a logo and all that, so it was just Raised Hunting Podcast.
We had an argument is what it was, and we couldn't decide on a name, and we were ready to do a podcast, so we said we're calling it Raised Hunting until we decide on a name.
There you go.
Now we got a name.
Now it just sticks. We're here in the Bear Archery booth, and I just did one a minute ago, and this place was like popping, dude. People are like bumping up behind us, and we're trying to record. Slow down a little bit now, but what's been the most exciting thing you've seen from Bear at ATA?
Oh, that's easy.
Are we going to go beside the new bow?
No.
It's easy?
Yeah, no.
What's yours?
The new bow.
Yeah.
He said it doesn't matter if he wants another answer. It's the new bow.
Yeah. The Execute, dude, is I know you know, it's a unbelievable
the best shooting bow I've ever picked up.
Mine, I can't miss with mine, and that's no BS. My favorite bow.
Challenge
so
accepted.
Far. I said me.
I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, Warren, we have an aspirin at 220. Don't miss.
We can test it. I don't know that I can live up to that, but I was shooting. I don't spend a lot of time shooting long distance, but shooting this summer, later this summer, I guess, 80, 90, and consistently really good groups, which the bow is just forgiving, and it's an enjoyable bow to shoot.
Yeah.
I think it's by far my favorite bow, and I don't know what they're going to do next year, but they might have a hard time pulling that one out of my hands.
Well, the wider stance on that limb pocket really just changes the entire way that bow balances.
Oh.
I mean, it balances like no other bow.
It's unbelievable.
It's just phenomenal.
See, for the older guy, it's the draw.
Yeah.
And I'm having issues with my shoulder and things like that, and so I can draw that bow where not that I can still draw my refine, but you watch me fight it, not because of the bow, but because of my physical ability. The Execute, I can draw so much smoother. I mean, it's just, so to me, that's the one that stands out. And then I think also just they've taken the shock out. Everything from an older person's perspective, which is where I consider myself now, is I'm not in that young crowd necessarily. It's been
seasoned.
phenomenal.
Let's not say older. Let's say seasoned.
I'm okay with it. I can live with it as long as I'm still doing what I'm doing. I'm still upright. It's all good.
My dad says, dude, I'm a proud old man. Like, I got my grandkids now. Like, he's like, I'm proud to be old.
Right.
But the first thing that was the first words out of my mouth was like, the draw cycle compared to the refine is night and day.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, I'm not saying I didn't like the refine, but I didn't like the refine as a draw cycle. And I said that I didn't hold any bones about it. I didn't like the draw cycle. And then you pick up this bow and it's like, oh crap, this is it.
What's amazing to me, everything that I thought that they could do better on it, literally the brand new Execute was that. The new stabilizer, the new stabilizer mount, the wire limb pockets, the new riser, the whole thing was just everything. I pretty much told you guys. I said I wish they would do this, and this.
Oh yeah, they did it.
Brand new bow,
did it all.
had all of it. Yeah, like you almost wouldn't even need a sidebar on that bow anymore because it balances so well, like you were talking about. It's incredible.
Yeah, I set that bow up. We got to Missouri, and I met Andrew from Trophy Ridge down in Missouri for a hunt, and he brought my bow with me, and we set it up like from the ground up. We set it up on Thursday morning, and Thursday night I shoot a buck with it. And I just told him, I'm like, man, like to be shooting this bow And we did the same thing. He set up the new digital React with, the speeds and everything. And he said, well, let's just see. Like, you've shot at 20, and ideally, this should be set at 60. So let's just jump back and see. And I'm like, dude, I shot this both 3 arrows, literally. And but I jumped right back to 60, and they were just stacking. And I'm like, crap. Like, and that's a testament to the digital, too. Are you guys shooting digitals, or what are you shooting?
Warren is. Easton's not, only because they hadn't made it in the left-handed yet.
Oh, yeah.
So now that's coming. So people should be now looking forward to in the trio.
Yeah, they have the trio in left-handed. Yeah.
They do. Yeah.
Yep.
And so, so Warren is shooting the React. I am not. I'm still the old school guy.
Well, the React technology, period, though, is the only reason you can sight in that fast.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
it's insane. So you just mentioned it. You're like, I don't know what's going to come next. And not just from Bear on bows, but like Escalade in general, Trophy Ridge, Bear, Sick, whatever line. What would you like to see? Like, what's that thing where you're like, man, I wish this would happen?
Oh, boy.
I know my answer. And I've openly told them.
What is it?
Work on the releases. Trophy Ridge releases. That's what I like to see. I like to see those.
That one would be a good one. The one thing that if I could have them add is I wish they would develop. So I'm not a fixed pin. I mean, I'm not a movable pin. I am a fixed pin guy. However, I agree with Warren. The 3-pin system is where it's at. The only thing that I wish they would do is make it where the 2 top pins are solid and the bottom pin is the only one that moves. Does that make sense?
2 top pins solid in the bottom.
Like the hot wire.
Well, because then that way, what I'm saying is that you would never move your 20 and 30 if that's what you're dialed in, is that's where it's set. And then your 3rd pin is the one that moves for you by itself.
Well, they're ahead of you.
They've already got it?
That's
the
hot wire.
Hot wire does that.
Oh, I don't know why I've never tried the hot wire then, because that would be the one that I would shoot.
Yeah.
It's a good little sight.
But right now, see, I guess the React technology, though,
that doesn't have React technology in it, though.
So that's what I'm saying. If you could build that into the React, then you would be somewhere, or in my opinion.
That'd probably be tough.
Andrew.
You got to keep them all on that same.
We need a hot wire. This just in right here. David Holder wants a hot wire React. Do it for next year. It's in his brain.
All right.
It's there. It's planted.
There. We've started something.
No, Andrew's the digital React was his baby. Like he that helped birth that and build that. And so, if anybody can do it, it's that man right there.
That's cool.
The trio was the one that I really wanted. I wanted those top 2 pins to be 19 thousandths, and then that 3rd one to be 10 thousandths.
Yep.
And then they did that with the new digital, and so that was it for me.
So I'll tell you what I did. It's like a Cyclops sight, dude. I took a digital housing, but I put a dovetail on it from the React Single Pro. So it's a digital React on a dovetail, 3-pin.
Yep.
I love it.
How'd you even do that?
All the parts are interchangeable.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, so you've got a digital React trio with a dovetail, sight on a mounting bracket. So it took literally 44 seconds to unscrew and screw it back on. It's 2 screws.
That's a pretty exact number. Did you time that?
I did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Your pit crew?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. 44 seconds. I'm like, man, you must have measured that.
So what would you like to see changed?
That would have been it for me. Honestly, when it came out, because that's the other thing. I used my React. The one thing I was skeptical of, they did such a good job on the trio. I thought that they were going to have a hard time being able to showcase that you could have a digital sight without giving up anything, from having a sight tape. I thought you were going to be in a position where you're not going to have a sight tape that would work in the scenario that your batteries died. I never plugged my sight in all year.
Really?
Not once. And it was 100% the whole time. But at the same time, I really don't need it that much when I'm whitetail hunting because I got 20, 30, 40 set.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I really 50, 60, but then like all summer, like I had like 3-4 weeks at least that I was turning that thing on, shooting all day. And that's what, I had one time I shot and I forgot to plug it back in. I'd shot that evening and then came back the next morning I didn't shoot again till the next evening, and I still had like 2 bars of battery. And the sight had been on for, I guess, almost 24 hours at that point. I had
one guy, last year when it was released, we were sitting there talking, and this group of guys come up and they're giving him the rundown. And he said, yeah, but I don't want to plug my bow in. And I'm like, you plug everything else in, like, you know?
Well, and the cord they give you is so long.
Yeah.
And I'd make the argument, for the amount that you're shooting,
Yeah.
with it actually on, you only need to plug the thing in.
Once,
Shoot,
twice.
If you're shooting a ton, maybe once every 3 weeks or something like that.
But even if you're shooting at a ton, I mean, I haven't had to charge mine once.
I've literally charged mine like twice.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
I'd like to see releases improved. That's my big thing. But that's really, man, I don't know how the guys come up with stuff. Like, I don't know what those meetings look like, because if I was in there, I'd be like, well, it's perfect, so let's just not do anything else.
I would have a hard time on the sights and bows at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
I had a few ideas on the bows last year. After the execute, I don't know what else I would be able to do with the execute. I love mine.
But here's the thing I can tell you guys, from being as old as I am, or as, what did you call it? Seasoned as I am, that we were saying that 15, 20 years ago, that now what? I mean, the technology is this. It's so much this. They've already hit the speeds that they didn't think they could hit. We're now hitting those speeds at 70 pounds rather than 80 pounds. They've already got every sight possible that you can think of. And then every year they come up with something else. And a lot of the stuff is stuff I've never even thought of or never would think of. And I wouldn't even think that I needed it until someone shows it to me and is like, oh, wait a minute, what you're doing is this, but it's better.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's probably different, too, when you're the one working on it.
Absolutely.
And you've got a good idea of what it is and what you want to do next from the original idea.
Yeah. So being seasoned, what's that one thing in the industry, like when it came out, you're like, this is going to change the face, like this is going to change everything about archery?
Ooh, just so from any time, the pop-up blind.
Really?
When a 5-hub style blind came out for the first time, I remember.
Who put it out for the first time?
Well, the first one that I saw was when Primos I take that back, Double Bull. Primos owns Double Bull now.
Yep.
So when Double Bull came out with those, I mean, you walk through a trade show, a consumer show, everybody stopped. It's like, what is this thing, man? Holy cow, you can like have a place to hunt out of right now. And it's waterproof and all this stuff. I mean, it was crazy seeing what was going on with that. I mean, and that was, I'm sure there might have been, like when a compound bow, but that was before me.
Yeah.
So I'm not that seasoned. Yeah. So, but
close. But
I'll just never
really seasoned.
But I just can tell you that. And now you come somewhere and there's probably 50 pop-up style blinds in here by 10 different manufacturers. But the first one was Double Bull was the first one to put that on the map.
So as far as archery specific, what was it?
Archery specific, gosh dang.
The release?
I don't know, because there was a growth there too. Like I had one of the first pistol grip. I mean, all it was a pistol. It was big, and it was a pistol grip deal, and it was plastic. It was cheap as all get out. Someone let me borrow it. I was like, I don't know if this thing's going to hold or not, and you're really like, I don't know if this is worth trying. Then I for a while, because they were so cheap, I went back to shooting a compound bow with my fingers. And then eventually I was like, okay, now they've probably only like, I would say that the release was more like a cell phone in the progression. All of a sudden they found, ooh, wait a minute, we can build these releases way better. And then they just started just flying. They started getting way, way, way better. So they weren't like a boof, or like something that just hit like where the ground blind, when I mean, there was nothing like it. And it was like, boom, here it is. And check this out. It's made.
Yeah.
I'd have to think.
You could probably say expandable broadheads.
Expandable broadheads could be another.
That's a good one.
Yeah, but I jumped on that bandwagon long time ago too. I was one of the first guys that I know of that started hunting elk with an expandable broadhead. I mean, I lived in Montana where everyone, like every outfitter, was you can't use them. We won't let you. And I was like, well, I killed my last 3 bulls at that time with expandable broadhead, and I just kept doing it. And now, we've killed between the family or people that we've hunted with, we've probably been part of 50 kills, expandable broadheads on some big, big animals.
So this whole new movement of
50 on elk.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Not
Not
counting
deer.
deer.
On deer,
Way
we'd
more
be
than that.
hundreds.
Yeah. So this whole new movement of big, heavy setups with single bevel, cut-on contacts, like expandables suck. What do you say to that?
They're wrong.
What's your rebuttal?
They're wrong.
I think
Flat out.
I think it all absolutely 99% of it comes down to shot placement. I think
Oh,
people are
100%.
just they're not hitting where they're supposed to, and then they're trying to blame it on a broadhead.
Yeah.
Or they're taking shots they shouldn't be taking with any setup, and then trying to blame it on the broadhead. I mean, I want to set up my arrows to be 600 grains and to be shooting a fixed blade broadhead so that I can shoot an elk in the front shoulder.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you just not shoot elk in the front shoulder? Wait till they're broadside or quartered away, and then you don't have that issue.
Yeah.
Because I don't care what you're shooting. I don't think that it's not fair to that animal to be trying to shoot them, quarter two and stuff like that. So I think that's where it all stems from. Is it's just shot placement.
Well, I had an uncle, and this really changed my whole perspective on broadheads and penetration and heavy arrows. And I had an uncle, and he had no idea. One of my cousins was like, "Hey, dude, I'm going to give you my old bow. You need a bow. You need to start shooting one." So he's like, "Yeah, that'd be fun, So he starts shooting it, and he was not a hunter. So he starts shooting it, and he had no idea. And so he calls him a couple days later, and he says, "Hey, dude, man, I started practicing that bow a lot. Dude, I love this thing. I actually just shot a deer with it." And he said, "Really? Like, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, dude, I went out and set up against a tree in my backyard, and the deer came out, and I shot one." And he said, "Really, dude? Well, did you go to Walmart and buy you some broadheads or something?" He said, "What are broadheads?" And he said,
a field point.
He said, "What do you mean, what are you shot them with field points?" He said, "Yeah." He said, "You can't do that." He said, "I can. It's dead. It's right here." And shot it perfectly and died. And that's when I was like, I heard one guy say, he said, you can kill any animal in North America with a 22. You just got to shoot it right.
It's probably true.
And the same is true with broadheads and arrow setups. These guys are going, and I mean, we're not here to talk bad about anybody, but these guys are going 650 grain arrows with, and I'm like, but why?
There's no point. And then the accuracy I guess it's not the accuracy you lose. It's the accuracy of how accurate you have to judge yardage.
Yeah.
That's what made, because I think I told you this on the podcast once before, that I went on the heavy arrow train for a little bit.
Yes.
And was shooting like 520s or something like that, 520 grain, somewhere in there for elk. And he actually called me in 2 bulls in a row. Shot the first one, it was 43. Held my 40 right on the heart lungs, figuring I'll be just fine.
Yeah.
Right underneath him. So didn't even think about it. Here comes the second bull, and same exact distance. And this time, though, I knew for sure. I was like, that's absolutely 43 because there was a rock that he was standing next to, and just held the 40 right on and right underneath him. So now I was really irritated. Figured my bow must have been bumped or something. So we go back to camp. And I shoot at 40, and it's could have hit a quarter. I mean, dead on him. So then I was okay. Well, I'm going to step back to 43 and shoot just with my 40-yard pin dead on and see how much drop we have. I'm figuring 3-4 inches. It was 8-10 inches. And then I went back to 40, shot again just to make sure, and it was dead on. And I was like, so you have to, out to 40, at that point, you have to be within
2 yards.
Yeah, 2 yards.
Yeah.
Or really even.
You missed the kill zone.
Yeah, I mean, you got to pretty much be dead on your yardage.
No, I had the same thing happen. I was shooting a heavy arrow setup, and I had switched to a single pin just for this, like, video stuff, and I'm not a single pin shooter, and so it never dawned on me, like, dial it down, and so the deer's at 24, and I just hold my 20 on him, but I missed, and I'm like, that's when I was like, okay, had that not been a 600 grain arrow, I would have still just punched him right in the heart, like, and so for me, that's what it is. I mean, what broadheads do you shoot?
We've been shooting NAPs. We've shot a mirage of them, honestly. 3-blade Rage. That's been one of my favorites. That's probably what I killed the most with. In the NAPs, I was shooting mine was the Striker, wasn't it? The
Spitfire.
Spitfire, the 3-blade there. Warren was shooting, and I've shot the Kill Zone as well.
Yeah. Kill Zone. I always like 2-blade. Anything 2-blade sip cam.
Yeah.
So.
But
yeah,
we have the opportunity here. We're going to get to mess with some others. I think we might try some of the sick broadheads. That Meat Seeker looks like a serious.
The sick SK2 is my favorite head I've ever shot in my entire life. I was down in Texas, and my buddy shot 4 animals in one night with the same broadhead. Would go out, get it, put another clip on, shoot another animal, go out, get another clip on, shoot another animal. Pass-throughs. The first time when those came out, I was on the single bevel train. And I'm like, well, I'll try these. And in Kansas, I had a deer move, and I shot him in the shoulder. And that broadhead busted through both shoulders. And I was like, yeah, I'm never shooting something else. So I'm right there with you, man.
Right.
But what's been the biggest surprise for you at the show? Like anything that like stuck out to you? New products, anything like that?
Oh, there's been a ton of new stuff.
There's been a lot
there's
of new
been
stuff.
some small, I feel like, upgrades, but I don't know that I've seen anything drastically new.
I think everything is just going lighter, faster, quieter. You know, there's boots out here that we've been buying boots or wearing boots. If you own something, you like it, you know, and so we have hunting boots or hiking boots that we like. And now we looked at a company making pretty much the same boot, only it's like on steroids. It's like half the weight. It's much stiffer. We've looked at sites now that
What boot company was it?
Hanwag.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them yet.
Yeah, it's pretty. I think it's that way.
I'm going to have to go look at
Super
them.
nice boots. Really nice.
I'm going to have to go look at them.
Have you seen anything that's blown your mind yet?
You know, I was thinking about that, and I thought, dude, last year the Digital React was like the talk of the show.
For sure.
Mean, you walked by at any given time, there was 12 guys surrounding it. And this year I just haven't seen that. You know, I don't think there's anything this year. But like you said, you know, there's things you walk by and you're like, oh, that's good to see changed a little bit, you know. Somebody told me, who was it? I think it was G5 came out with their own arrow.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think. I haven't seen it yet, but
yet.
that's what I was told. So, but anyways, that's, you know, we got off on a couple tangents, but I saw Warren post a video, and you guys obviously talked about this on your podcast.
Yep.
So if we do a bad job, head over to Raised Hunting Podcast. They'll do a better job of it. But this idea of deer zones, it intrigued me because I've got this property. Well, I'll get into it a little bit, but walk me through that idea of deer zones that you were talking about on your podcast.
Well, so the more that we started looking at this, my opinion on these deer zones is that I'm starting to think that if you have trying to think of the best way to lay this out. So let's just say that you have a 100-acre piece, you know, and it's rectangular. You got crops on it, you got timber, everything that a deer would need. You would think that deer typically would just cover that entire 100 acres. Well, it seems to me the more and more that we'll find is that we're finding them that where they're just in one corner of that 100 acres, or they're every once in a while you'll have one that he's dead center, and he'll cake that entire 100 acres. Or you'll have some that they'll stay on the north end of that 100 acres, and they will never, like there is a hard line in the sand, they will never ever go to the south part of that 100 acres. Or in the rare instance that there's a doe and heat or whatever the case may be, that he was bumped, something that forces him to go over to that south side, he'll do it. But we have several deer now where we have instances that, like, I feel as though I could go out and walk you into the timber and I could show you, draw a line right here and say, this deer, that one right there, he will never cross that line. Like he will always be at least somewhere up in that direction. So I guess we hadn't really put a name to it or anything, but I'm just calling them deer zones. And the deer that I killed this year would probably have been one of the best examples of that. That's where I really started keying in a little bit more on that idea. I'd seen that deer. I had a camera on a big scrape, big community scrape right there for a month and a half. Never saw the deer, never had a picture, nothing. Alyssa and I started hunting that stand and saw the deer, Magnum, for like 2 days in a row, like 5 times in a week. So we were seeing him almost every day or every other day, like just constantly. And yet I never had a single picture of this deer.
Wow.
And so at that point I was like, well, maybe he's just in here with a doe or something. So I moved the cameras a little bit further to the north. And then all of a sudden I started getting a whole bunch of pictures of him. And so then I was like, this deer must be a resident and he must live here. And then for whatever reason, that seems to be a border of his. Well, once this year rolled around, I had a hunch on where I felt like he was summering because I didn't think he was on us during the summer. And October 2nd, I got the first picture of him, and that'd be true. Well, I had a camera back in the same exact spot that I did the previous year. And all year, I never got a single picture of him except for one night. I got one photo of him walking by it at like 11-something at night. That was the only one that I got the entire time. But yet I had cameras to the north that I was getting pictures of him.
Constant.
Yeah, super consecutively, and then killed him up there to the north. So that's a good example. I know you've had a few deer that you've chased that have been like that. Blade was similar.
Blade was very similar. I mean, we had a deer that was pretty well known to be 5 years old this year, and the year before that was when we really started hunting this deer. And I would go as far as to say that zone can change, meaning they have a zone that they could be using in the summer, a zone that they may use in the fall, and then a zone that they may be using during the rut.
Yep.
And this deer was, I mean, he was consistent. What was crazy was, so he was a pass-through deer for me. He didn't stay on me in the summertime. He did stay on me during the rut, which was great. But then as the rut dwindled, he would move off of me and onto the neighbor. And I mean, you could, and the same cameras that would light up, and where we come up with this theory is because it was year after year. It wasn't like he did it once, and he did it 2 years in a row. This year he had started to do it a third year, only he ended up getting injured, and so it kind of threw everything out of whack. But you know, Juice was another one. Juice was probably the best example of a deer that stayed inside of a zone. I think I have one picture across a gravel road where I own across the gravel road or hunted on across the gravel road. And one time
To the west. Yeah.
One time I got a picture of him over there in 5 years.
Yep.
You know, but other than that, you could draw, and I would say some deer areas are bigger, some are smaller.
Yeah.
So,
well, the reason in that video, when I saw you talking about that, I'm like, I'm not the only one, because I thought I was crazy. My in-laws, they have 5 acres. That's it. But it's really good. And last year, I was set up in a different spot. It was really for my wife, more so than anything, so she could drop the kids off at her parents and run out and hunt. And I had a camera set up, and I had deer everywhere. Like, I mean, you would have 10, 12 does come in, 4 or 5 different shooter bucks, and I'm like, this place is crazy cool. Well, I moved it to the other side of the property. And again, 500 acres, so 300 yards. I mean,
5 acres, not 500.
5 acres, yeah.
5 acres,
Yeah.
you said, right?
5 acres.
Yeah.
And so it's literally.
It threw me off, too.
Yeah, because
Oh, did I say the wrong thing?
You said
Yeah,
500.
you said 500 the second
Oh.
time. I was like, wow, that piece grew.
5 acres. And so it's literally 300 yards from the old place. And I had a camera out for 3 months, and I get one spike. And I'm like, what the heck? So I move it back, and there they are. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine deer not coming 300 yards. And there was a protein feeder. Like, they didn't come to it. But then I moved it back, and I have pictures and pictures and pictures. So I'm like, I thought I was crazy, dude. But then I hear you talking about it, and I'm like, why is it? Like, why do you think that is?
I think there's a multitude of factors. I think sometimes it can be food.
Yeah.
You know, that you're too far away from the food. I think sometimes it can be cover, that they don't feel like they have a place they can go and get away. I think there can be cattle, or, you know, can be something that forces them out. Landowners messing with them too much, too close to a road. Although I would say that some of those things can be flip-flop too. You can think that they're not close to the road, and they're staying close to the road, and they're doing it on purpose.
See, that had to have been because where I moved it to, I thought I was giving them more cover. I thought they're going to feel more safe here because I moved it back into the trees more, back away from the openings, and I'm like, this is going to be better for the deer. It's going to, but no.
Yep.
And so I just thought, what in the world is going on?
Well, where you killed Magnum, you were in the right area, but he came where you actually shot him. You weren't expecting to see him there.
No, because I never seen him go that direction.
Right.
But I think what I'm really looking at is the individual bucks. You know,
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of these individual bucks they'll find that there's just a spot. Like I would have told you where I killed that deer, Magnum. You could have put a lot of pressure on that deer, like a lot of pressure on the deer, and you'd had a hard time running him out of there. Now
So he was stupid.
He could have been stupid, but I think he was smart enough that he would have become much more careful about where he accessed and how he accessed and on what winds he did it. But he lived there, you know, like it was going to take a lot of pressure before he would say, okay, I don't want to live here anymore, and I'm going to go and relocate. So I don't know if it's something that's ingrained in them from the time that they were born, where it's just like
This is home.
just naturally of like these are my areas. This is my summer home, or this is my permanent home, or if it's a dominance thing.
That was the first thing that crossed my mind when I heard you talking about it. But then I thought about that property. I'm like, well, all of the deer stayed over there. Like, it wasn't one buck wasn't coming over because there was another buck, a bully buck over here that was pushing them out. Like, it was all the deer.
Yeah. So that one I would say possibly be something that's a little different as far as maybe there's some other factors that
there's got to be a factor. And
well, I think one of the factors can be what you just said. You have a bully buck in somewhere, and so that'll keep a buck from venturing into that zone at all. He's not going into that deer zone at all. And I do think that sometimes those bully bucks, they'll have a big zone.
Oh yeah,
they're not afraid to venture around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they'll kind of cut through. They're not afraid to go in here. You almost think they're kind of dumb.
Yeah,
And sometimes I feel like they are. I feel like you do get cracks at those deer if you want to kill them. Most of the time, they're not a deer that the average guy hunting the Midwest wants to put a tag on. They're just not what you've got. They're typically, for me, what I see is they're a big-bodied 8-point buck that's not going to score that well. Big muscular neck, real thick, heavy horns, just made for fighting.
Bingo.
And that's what they want to do.
And those deer there, you can grunt and call them in.
They'll come
every day of the week.
Throw a decoy out, watch them tear it up.
I almost wonder if we should be paying more attention now to our brawlers. Do your brawler deer stay in as tight of a zone, or are they expanding because they're not worried about going in somebody else's area? If your deer that aren't as incentivized to fight, if maybe they take a little bit.
Well, and I don't mean anything by this, but it might sound bad, but it's the best way I can think of it is like the ghetto gangs, like, deer.
That's not what I was expecting to come out of his mouth.
Deer don't go into other deer's territories because they're like, hey, I don't cross this. Like, this is where he lives.
Especially if they had a buck hit once.
Well,
they don't want to go back in.
Well,
there.
I went to Oklahoma, showed up at the outfitter, and he's like, hey, listen, I need this deer killed. And he said what's funny, I'll show you a picture after this. The picture-perfect deer of what you just described, an 8-year-old 8-point, 250 pounds, nothing up top, maybe 110, but just a bully. He said, I guarantee you go out there and grunt and rattle, he's coming. And I'm like, okay, all right. And so I see him at 300 yards, and I just let it rip. And, dude, he turns and comes right to me. And I actually had a giant 12-point, just, I don't know, 100 yards that way. And the moment he saw that deer coming, he bolted. And after I was playing this out for the outfitter, he's like, that's exactly why I want that deer killed. Because these other deer don't come to the feeders. They don't, they don't hit food plots. They don't, because this deer right here.
Yep.
And so literally I watched that deer say, I'm not going any further than this because he's over there.
Yeah, it's really fortunate, though, when you get one of those deer that is huge. Yeah. Like some of them, it's their attitude. That one he killed Juice, that deer was that way. He's a 179-inch deer, but it did not. His goal was to kill anybody. Like he just walked around pissed off. Like he just wanted to steamroll anybody in his path. So how many times did you call him in?
In 2 years, probably 6 times.
Yeah.
And he would slip by. He'd get, and not that he wouldn't come close enough. He'd come close enough, but he just would get by a tree. I couldn't shoot. He'd come the wrong side of the tree, that kind of stuff. But he had very rarely, in my opinion, do you find both. Meaning you find that brawler that also has that rack to go with it. And Juice was that. I mean, he got his eye torn out, and he just was all about fighting,
So I want to flip this script and look at the other side of things. But first, I got to give a thank you to my friends over at Forerunner Blinds. For me, that was a product that changed everything. It's a pop-up blind, essentially, but it's a big metal steel frame, and it's got pop-down wheels. So you can pop the wheels down. It's got a trailer hitch on it. You can pull it anywhere on your property, pop the wheels down, and you've got a giant 6x6 blind to hunt out of. It's incredible. Guys, go check out Forerunner Blinds. It's changed the way I hunt because where I used to have 5 pop-up blinds, now I use that one and just drag it to different parts of the property. So definitely go check them out. They're an awesome blind. Flip-flop this. You ever have just a timid deer, and you're like, you throw a decoy up, they ain't coming in because they don't like to fight. You start grunting, and they go the other way because they don't want to fight. Have you had as much experience with timid deer as you have with those brawlers?
The one that the deer I shot last year, straight up, I have every one of his sheds up until I killed him. He had never broke a tine. I mean, in all the years, we have every shed, and he never busted one. I realized 2 years ago, because I grunted at him one time, when we finally made it to 5, I ended up killing him at 6. I'm trying to call this buck in, just like normally, hit a grunt call, do whatever. He ain't coming. He would turn and leave. And I realized, okay, this deer is not a brawler. This deer is totally about mating does. Yeah, that's the only way that you're going to have any effect on this deer. You're not going to be able to do that. So he would be my number one thought when I refer to one that I know of that was like that he was not a big brawler, not big fighter.
So what were you doing different to kill him? Just mostly focusing on the food?
Yeah, got to be in his zone.
Yeah.
Got to get in that zone and know where he travels. And that's how I ended up killing him, was on a food plot.
So are those deer, did you notice that his zone was a lot smaller because, he kept to himself, didn't want to run into other bucks? And
it was small. It was really small,
Yeah. There might be some more to that.
Yeah.
We might have to really go back in the archives and explore that thought, because his was really small.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a deer that I happen to know his summer zone.
Yep.
And his summer zone was 1.5 to 2 miles away from where he was when I killed him, and where I knew he was the deer that I judged when the rut was about to start, because he would move. And when he moved, he would show up on my trail cameras every year at the same scrape. And he did it 4 years in a row, and boom, here he is. But once he got there, we're talking about a deer that probably wasn't moving. He was within a quarter mile, half mile, something like that, which is a small area for a deer to travel in. So, that would be.
How often was he hitting scrapes?
Quite a bit.
He was still hitting them pretty.
Yeah, he hit the scrapes a lot. He would come to them.
Well, that's what's so crazy about it to me, is that you could have a deer like that where either you get one picture of him, when he was on his way to that new area, or you get a picture, when he's chasing a doe. But, if your border was right there, that deer could be right across the fence.
You'd never know
all
it.
the time, and you have no idea.
Yep.
That to me is what's so crazy about the zone idea, is that you could have deer right next to you that you have no idea that they're there.
Well, look how many deer so we border a neighbor that we share photos back and forth with. He owns more ground than I do. So when I get pictures, when I'm literally talking across the fence, he's on one side of the fence, we're on the other side of the fence, and he'll have pictures of deer that I've never seen. And so their zone just doesn't come as far down as our place.
Yep.
And that happens a lot. Occasionally, but because we don't have access to as much ground, we'll have a deer that he never sees. The deer I just mentioned, this deer straight up that I shot last year, he never got a picture of him. The neighbor never got a picture of him. Yeah, and yet, really? 250, 300 yards away, I would get a picture of him 4 times a week.
Yeah. I've got a buddy, one of my best friends has 500 acres in Missouri, and that's where I went with Andrew to hunt. And we're driving around, and we see this giant, a beautiful, gorgeous buck. And my buddy, and might I say, he runs, crazy amounts of cameras, and this property is super well managed. And he says, dude, in my 5 years, I've never seen that deer one time. And it was right in the center of his property. You would think but it was right in the center of the 500 acres. Like, I've never seen that deer. I've got 17 cameras out right now, and I've never seen that deer. And so doing some more, recon, he put cameras right in that area. And he said, dude, this deer never leaves. He's within this little, I don't know how big, but he's in this little area, and he never leaves. So are those deer harder or easier to kill? Because you know where they're going to be, but at the same time, they're timid. They're not easy to get to react. And
I think they're harder to find, easier to kill.
Yeah.
That'd be my theory on them. Because once you can find them, I think you're in the chips.
Yeah. So what do you say to the guy? How do you explain this to the guy that says, well, if they're over there, how do I want to question this? How do I want to phrase this? They're over there. If they're on my property, they're going to come to my food plot. It doesn't matter where I set up. I don't have to do any of that work anymore because they're going to come to my food plot.
Personally, I'd say you're going to miss deer.
Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm going to say you're not going to kill them much, bud.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but there's going to be deer that I feel like they're going to be end of their ranges where Maybe in the right circumstances, if there's no other food around, there's no good ag or anything, that you might be able to suck all of them to your food plot. But I think in other instances where it's more abundant and they don't have to go just to your food plot,
like in the Midwest where there's cornfields everywhere,
absolutely,
soybeans and winter wheat, but you have a lot of guys that buy into that. Like I've got 500 acres, and I don't really have to work. I'm just going to throw corn out, and all the deer are going to come there. Like that's not true.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have a tough time.
Yeah.
Or you're gonna have a whole bunch of deer you don't know about. I'd love to go hunt that place.
Yeah. So for this, the person that's listening and they're like, "Oh man, I've never even thought of this." Like, I was the guy that just thought, "Man, if I put corn out, they're going to be here in front of my stand." What steps do you start taking to figure out those zones where deer are at? Like, is it just more cameras? Is it moving current cameras? Is it what steps do you start taking?
I think scouting, just old-fashioned scout. I mean, one of the things.
Boots on the ground scouting.
Yeah, you start, number one, spending some time out there and seeing some of the deer helps. Finding sheds. I mean, it's a combination of stuff. We don't do any one thing. It's all the things that we're doing. We're watching this time of year, meaning, it's February or January now, you're going to start to see deer dropping antlers. So when we pick up an antler, pretty sure that deer is around, and not only is he around, hopefully he's around and he's bigger than what I'm holding in my hand. And at the same time, what you see right now, one thing that Warren and I have been commenting on is the fact that we love this time of year to see all of the sign. It just shows up like a street. I mean, it's almost like looking at a downtown streetway. It's like, oh, they went this way and they went this way. Look, all the rubs are on this side. They're obviously traveling this way. There's some big rubs that I hadn't seen. There's signpost rubs, rubs that are hit year after year. Scrapes you've seen now that have been open and stay open, and they're still hitting them. Food plots that, it's changed. They move their food pattern. I would say that's probably one that a lot of people are not paying as much attention to, is that especially hunting Midwest or areas where there's lots of ag, is your crop rotation can change your deer movement.
So I'm a big preacher of your scouting starts now, and now's the easiest time to scout, just like you said, and you said it perfectly. But I also tell people, just because you've hunted this same piece of family ground for 10 years doesn't mean nothing's going to change. Like, sometimes people buy into that idea of like, well, we've hunted this for 10 years. We've killed deer out of this every year for 10 years. And then, boom, this season comes and they haven't done any scouting, and they're like, where are all the deer at? Like, things have changed. So I also say that you can't hunt the same every year. You gotta scout it new every year. I mean,
for sure,
to a degree.
No, I think we see that because we have a lot of stands that are set, and I'm back moving. I don't move them all. I don't go into my farm and say I got 10 stands across 150 or 200 acres and I'm going to move them all this year. But I might move one or two of them every year because there's a deer has a different zone than what another one had. And so I need to be in a slightly different location.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I do think if you can run a whole bunch of trail cameras, all those different scrapes that you can find and stuff, it'd probably be worth putting a camera on. Be interested to see what you find.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had guys that say, yeah, I've got a camera out, and I'm like, a camera? Like,
oh, yeah, that's...
What do you mean, a camera? And they're like, well, dude, I've only got 10 acres. I'm like, still, what do you mean, a camera? Like, you know what I mean? How far do you tell people, like, if you've got 100 acres, how many cameras should they have out?
I'm going to say that it all depends on the lay of the land. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, like, I have one farm that we hunt that's almost exactly what you just talked about, 75 acres. I probably could have had 4 cameras on it. I ran 2 on it because I felt like I was in the right location. I mean, I'm going to know what deer are here. And what I mean by that is leaving standing beans. Okay. And then I got cold weather. I should know what deer are here. Another one was I had an active scrape. There's an entrance and exit of this piece of property. On another piece of property, I have 50 acres and I've got 6 cameras. So, I mean, it's less land, more cameras. The other one's bigger piece of property. So I think it just depends on how the ground lays.
I get you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you had to pick, like, I would feel like, how many is on the 80? 2?
3.
3?
I have one at either end of the food plot, and then I usually have one at the top of the hill, Min Hill.
Yeah, so you probably put 5 or 6 on there.
Probably. And I've done that, but what I found was when I had 5 or 6, I had pictures of the same deer. I didn't have pictures of...
No, that's not true. I remember the one on the rub tree.
Mm-hmm.
You were getting different deer there. Not a lot, but some.
But some, yes, for sure.
Well, I think that's just the expansion out of those zones, you know? So I think really, I don't know that there's a correct answer to that question because it can be, there's just so much that goes into that. But, 100 acres, I think you could easily have 6 to 10 cameras on that. No problem.
Yeah. No, and that, you answered it perfectly. And I know there's no, cut set in stone every 100 yards you need to have a camera. But, one instance comes to mind, last year in Oklahoma, I was hunting a tree stand I called the Ridge, and it was phenomenal. It was really cool. And we had our cameras set up where we thought, we need all our cameras, and then all of a sudden the deer just start changing completely. I'm like, the heck happened? Well, it was already a natural pinch point because it was literally a 20-foot ridge bluff. It was a pinch where they had to go down. Anyways, then you start exploring, getting boots on the ground, and it turns out a giant tree had fallen, and it literally closed off the pinch point. They could no longer get through there. And so all of a sudden you got to change all your cameras. There's no point in having cameras down here. There's not going to be any deer, or very few deer. And so, yeah, I think you got to look at the land and see that and understand what needs to go where. But
that comes back to the scouting thing. If you're not scouting, if you actually getting boots on the ground, going out and looking and seeing, you wouldn't have found the fallen tree.
Yeah.
If you're relying on your camera and that's all you're relying on, you could be missing what's going on.
Live by one rule: always have more cameras.
Yeah.
That's how it goes.
You could probably get into a black hole there. You could probably run as many cameras as you
and
want.
Still miss them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, you're going to. Just like I said, 500 acres. What did I say? I think he said 17 cameras, and he was missing a deer, and a giant, not just a any deer. It was a giant deer. I will say this. Side note: I'm looking at your belt, and I'm ticked off.
Yeah.
I bought a belt yesterday, and they didn't have the race hunting ones out there.
I think that was custom.
It was custom made.
Oh, crap.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I'm not sure that we'll be able to get more of these or
That's
not.
one of one.
Matter of fact, we don't even have enough for Easton.
He's mad about it, too.
We only got 2. So either we got to trade off, one guy wears.
Oh, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah. There you go.
Or
it's
you can
cool,
just get some fingernail polish, and you can paint white fingernail polish and just paint his.
There you go. I don't
race
think
hunting.
it'll look like that. That's sharp looking.
That's
Yeah, it
really
does.
cool. That's really
Yeah,
cool.
we had no idea.
So, what's your big hunts for this year? What do you got planned?
We haven't even planned them yet.
No, we're just now getting all our turkey stuff. I'm going back to Nebraska to go turkey hunting. So we're that far, at least so far. But right now is when we start putting in for elk tags and everything. So had to get through these last few days of the show, and then we'll get started on what are we going to do.
So, what's your standard every year we're hitting these hunts? What are those places for you, those hunts for you?
Typically, we're always on it. We got a good buddy that we antelope hunt with every year. We usually try to have one of us or 2 of us killing an elk every year. That can vary on where we go. And then almost always we hunt turkeys in Iowa, but we also head somewhere else to hunt turkeys as well. And then there's usually one more hunt in there somewhere that we'll just kind of see what's going along. Someone might want a bear hunt, or we haven't killed a mule deer in a while, so we're kind of inching toward mule deer for sure.
I want to kill a mule deer.
Yeah.
Yeah, a real big one. I really want to go to Canada and kill one. That'd be all right.
Do it, dude.
Dude, they're giants.
Do it.
Huge.
You ever hunted the early season velvet Kentucky hunt?
I haven't.
Oh, I just put in for it this year. Not put in for it, but I'm going this year.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah,
It's
really
over
excited.
the counter.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I shouldn't have said put in, but I booked the hunt today, and I'm excited.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that looks like a fun one.
I don't like hunting in the heat though. I'm the kind of guy, I'm not getting in a tree stand until almost end of October. Because I don't like sweating.
You're going to have a tough time on that one then.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably gonna be
It'll
really
be worth it. Be worth it. You kill a 150-inch solid velvet deer. That'd be cool.
Yeah. What's your the number one bucket list animal right now?
Mine's easy. If I had to pick one animal that if I could go tomorrow, would be an Alaskan moose. But I want to bow hunt it with, and I want to call it in, and so there's some parameters around that.
And you want it to be a big one?
No, as long as it's legal. I don't care. I just want it close.
Yeah.
That's my whole thing, is get them right up in my face, and
Yeah.
A big mule deer.
Not a small one.
No, I do want a big one.
A big.
I got to have a big one of everything, and then I'm
giant.
good. I got a big elk a few years ago, so I'm good there.
So what's your goal? Like, by the end of your life, what's your goal? Do you have that? Like, I was talking with Jack Frost, legendary bow hunter, and he's like, the slam, whatever, this. I want to hunt in every 50 states. That's my goal. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. Like, that's new.
No, I don't know that I've ever really put thought into that.
I haven't, but, I haven't put much thought to it.
Well, it's a really interesting question because I have a lot of I really would like to do some world travel hunts later down the road, but there's a lot of money involved in that. So, but there's some places like I was looking at, what was I watching? Norway.
Mm-hmm.
You ever watch any hunting videos from Norway?
No.
Dude,
but I'm going to now.
You have to. That's gorgeous.
I will.
Like if you were watching any like Viking movies and stuff, the scenery is unbelievable. And so they're hunting muskox over there and caribou and stuff. So I think it'd be really cool to see some different parts of the world and hunt over there and in some of those places. But I still have stuff I want to hunt here. Elk still for me are enough. Like I just love elk hunting. Have you hunted elk yet?
I have. I went this year, and man, yeah. And of course, when you plan a hunt like that, you can't control what happens with the weather, And we get there, and there was just forest fires everywhere. And they were across the river. We were safe, but there were mornings we'd wake up and couldn't see 200 yards, and so it just locked those elk up. I mean, just
what
locked
state
them up
were you in?
completely. Idaho. Locked them up completely, man. I mean, they don't know whether the fire's 10 yards or 2,000 yards. All they know is, man, when we smell this, we normally die. And so the elk locked up, and that's when I shot the bear with my recurve and missed. Not missed, but didn't find it. And so it was a good hunt, but I try to do one, bigger, more quote-unquote extravagant hunt every other year is what I try to. But with young kids, it's hard to get away for 12 days for a hunt.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we had one, I think he would maybe agree with this statement. I think even over him killing a big mule deer or me killing a moose, if we had one hunt that we could accomplish this year, it would be to have Easton kill an elk. I mean, that's just, I'd love to be there, and call a bull in for him or be the one filming when Warren calls it in.
But I tell you what, he's not going to be wearing a Raised Hunting Groove Life belt when he does it.
No, he may not be.
No.
That'd be the deal breaker.
But if you had to choose one animal for the rest of your life, you could only hunt that animal, what would it be?
Whitetail deer for me.
Easy. Yeah, for me too.
Elk.
Get out of here.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I mean, that's...
if it came to the health part, though, where you got past it, where you had the capability to be doing elk hunting all the time, then I would probably go to whitetails. But right now, elk hunting it's just like turkey hunting, just on steroids.
Yeah, I don't know. See, turkeys are up there with deer for me even. I mean, I love hunting turkeys.
I hate
love
turkeys.
it.
Turkeys are stupid.
I don't care. I love hunting them.
It's just
Screw
a bird. Like,
Absolutely love it.
They rile me, though.
they rile you.
Oh, I can't. Deer, elk, everything, I'm usually pretty good. Turkeys, I can't hit turkeys to save my life. They just get me all jacked up.
Yeah. No, I've got these buddies, and they're like, man, shot 13 turkeys in 13 states this year. I'm like, but it was still a bird. No matter where you went, it was a bird. Like, I don't get it.
I called in, and for other people and myself last year, 10 in 10 days. 10 days
cool.
of hunting, we killed 10 birds, 8 of them with our bows, 2 of them with shotguns, I think it was.
Now, what I will say, though, is the western turkey hunts, those appeal to me. Like to be in the mountains and chase them in the mountains, that seems cool to me.
They appeal to me. So do the eastern
I would
ones.
like to do
So
that.
do the southern ones.
So have you done the turkey slam?
I've killed the slam. I have killed the slam. I've never done it in one season.
What was the hardest and what was the most rewarding turkey?
Iowa turkeys have been one of the hardest that I've...
Really?
For sure. They can be really, really, especially after the first week. If you hunt them the first week, they're pretty good. After that, they can get really, really tough. It's too long a story to tell, but one day we'll talk about turkeys specifically, and I'll tell the story of Bushy Beard. That would be the hardest.
Why'd they both giggle when you said that?
Because he's insane, dude. He shot for 8 days straight to get a shot at this turkey.
These guys both giggled when you
Yeah.
said that name. They're like, "Oh gosh, not that bird again."
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't be a normal person to do what he did to get a shot at that turkey. Like, it was no way I'd have ever done it. I'd had a hard time doing that for a 200-inch deer.
So what's the addiction there? Like, what's the...
It's hunting. And I love calling. I love making them move and do things. I love, they're beautiful even though they're really ugly, but they're very pretty. And I don't know. Like Warren said, I mean, when it comes to elk, I love hunting elk because you can call them. I love calling white. I would shoot a smaller whitetail that I call in than a bigger one that I just set up on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just something about making an animal go do something that he wasn't intending to do that day with me interacting. My wife says that I communicate better with animals than I do with people, and it's
That's why you kill stuff.
I do. I love working on that.
Yeah. So what's that one tip? I ask every guest, what's a tip? A hunting 101 field note, tech tip, something I can take and put in my back pocket and make myself a better hunter with.
Man, don't give up. I mean, Easton's experienced it this year but those days when you wake up and you're like, I'm just going to sleep in today because I've been busting my butt now for 10 days or 7 days, or on an elk hunt, it's only 4 or 5, and you're worn out mentally and physically.
Keep going.
You got a little more in the tank. You can.
Not only that, I heard it put really well, and it was Fred Eichler. He said, way I look at it, if I'm on a 7-day hunt and I haven't seen anything the first 6 days, my chances are better on the 7th day. Most guys are down on themselves. They're like, dude, I've been out here for 6 days. I haven't seen one animal. Well, that just means you've narrowed down where they're not, and now your chances are better on the 7th, not worse.
For sure.
So,
if I had one thing I would tell people to do is give yourself the chance to have the experience from this year. We've seen a lot of people that are limiting themselves on just taking opportunities, shooting animals, getting that under their belt because they're trying to kill, a monster right out of the gate.
yeah, I would say more cameras. That's my tip.
More cameras.
More cameras.
That could be a good one.
Like, I've got 13 more cameras.
Yep.
Yeah, don't ever give up on cameras.
Clearly you need more cameras.
Yeah, it's not enough. I do want to make one thing. I want to mention this real quick because Warren is a Pope and Young official measurer. Right now, Bear is doing so. We're looking at all these new bows at ATA. You've been looking through them all. Right now, if you buy a Bear bow, you get a free Pope and Young membership. So when you buy a bow, you register it online. They're going to send you an email, and Bear Archery is going to pay for your Pope and Young membership. So as you decide which bows you're looking at, any Bear bow you buy, just remember, make sure and get it registered. Or if you bought one last year, get that paperwork back out, register it, and you're going to get a free Pope and Young membership. Guys, where can they find you at? Where can they find the podcast? Where can they find the show?
Podcast, you can find Race Hunting Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Instagram Race Hunting, Facebook Race Hunting, TikTok Race Hunting, YouTube Race Hunting. Just type in Race Hunting, and you'll find whatever you're looking for.
Google raised hunting.
Yep.
We're all over.
Yeah. Guys, before we go, one more shout-out to my friends over at Nick's Knife Works. I'm a sucker for a good knife. I love hand-forged, high-quality knives, and my buddy Nick Deeker out of Kansas does it and does it well. So go check out nicksknifeworks.com for any of your knife needs. Guys, thanks for listening. Y'all have a great week.